we're going to start today talking about Damar Hamlin. And right before we went on the air, just moments ago, so this might be breaking news to many of you guys, the Buffalo Bills tweeted out the following. I will read it in full. Per the physicians caring for Damar Hamlin at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, Damar has shown remarkable improvement over the past 24 hours. While still critically ill, he has demonstrated that he appears to be neurologically intact. His lungs continue to heal, and he is making steady progress. We are grateful for the love and support we have received. So, I think for a lot of people, the key words there are neurologically intact. And as is the case with a lot of parts of this, great news is also somewhat almost horrifying in that it is great news, right? So you hear neurologically intact. I'm obviously not a doctor, and unlike lawyer, it's not even something I pretend to be. But it sounds like what they're saying is, I think that means that their concerns about brain damage have been alleviated to a degree. Again, I don't want to put out bad information. I'm just telling you my reaction, neurologically intact, is that's what they mean. Also, Ian Rappaport tweeted a few minutes ago, Damar Hamlin opened his eyes last night and is responsive. Truly incredible. One thing that's clear from speaking to those close to him, they are endlessly appreciative of the medical care given to Hamlin on the field immediately than over the last 72 hours. Rappaport then also tweeted, Damar Hamlin has been gripping the hands of those close to him. Another very positive sign. So this is all really excellent news. As far, I think it seems from reading what I've read from the people that actually are medical experts, this is about as good of news as you could possibly have gotten at this point in the situation, given what a scary and devastating situation this has been. So I want to spend a few minutes here talking about the great stuff and then talking about where I think we all must do better. And on the do better part, I have been wrestling with how to talk about this for 48 hours, and I'm still not sure how I'm going to do it. So we'll all find out together. On the great part, it is a testament to the professionalism, expertise, and ability of the people, the medical professionals in that stadium. And I do not think this is overstating it, that they saved this young man's life. And I had been hesitant on television on Tuesday to use the phrase saved his life because, to me, at the time, from what I was reading, was still very on the board that Damar was going to lose his life. With this latest update, I read you everything we have, and I'm not a medical expert. So I don't want to act like, he's totally out of the woods, but it looks like everything is trending in the right direction. From everything I've read about sudden cardiac arrest, those first few minutes are the tipping point of which direction this can go. If you want to have any chance of a positive outcome, those first few minutes are critical, and the people involved, it would appear, executed it perfectly. And this is where we now start to bleed into what we must do better. So, I want everyone to understand something. An NFL player having his heart stop live on the field during the game, there's a reason none of us had ever seen that on television. It is because, as best as I understand, in, call it the last 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of NFL football, this specific medical emergency has never happened on an NFL field. Yet, despite that, the folks who were charged with saving Damar's life, knew exactly what to do and handled it, it would seem, perfectly. Got to get the face mask off. I think you need a screwdriver. You need something to do that. CPR. Where's the defib machine? All of it. Bang, bang, bang. Moments. Outdoors. In a stadium. On a field. Again, these are the real life things, right? They are running from where they were. They're out of breath. So confusion. I don't think anyone's head goes to his heart stopped. You usually think he's unconscious because of brain. Diagnosed it. Figured it out. Go. Seconds matter. And clearly, this is something they have a protocol in place for. Despite the fact that it has literally never happened in an NFL game. They had a protocol in place and they followed it, and it appears they saved his life. That is why the reaction of immediate villainization of seemingly anyone or any entity one could vilify, to me reveals a real, what's the word? Issue is not the strong enough word. It was a real-time example of a flaw that I think far too many of us have, which is the need for a bad guy, a villain, just because we're looking for either a reason or a place to put our anger and hurt. So, within moment, before Damar Hamlin was in the ambulance, there was loud, via Twitter, which is my preferred social media, anger at the NFL for wanting to resume the game. Now, the NFL, and I don't think the NFL is perfect, and I don't think they always tell the truth. But in this one, I believe them, is adamant that was not what they were trying to do. Resume the game. I also believe Joe Buck, who's a great journalist, that he was told by someone it's 5 minutes and then they're supposed to be back on the field. I also think there is a clear, how can both of these things be true? How can the NFL be telling the truth and Joe Buck be telling the truth? It's very simple that the written down listed protocol is that for most injuries, once the player's off the field, the game immediately resumes. But if there has been an elongated delay due to player injury, you can give the teams 5 minutes to warm back up. And so someone was asked, what do we do here? And somebody in a position of semi-power was like, well, what's listed here is 5 minutes. But that was never happening because this was an unprecedented incident. And I think smart people knew that was never happening. And yet, if you have a grudge against Roger Goodell or a grudge against the NFL or a weird grudge against football, even if you are invested in football, you make your money in football or love football, said, look, another example of what sons of bitches these guys are, how little they care. And that was irrational. And it was misplaced anger. But people needed a place to put their anger. And I think they also a little bit needed a place to put their guilt. More on the guilt in a moment. And then once the game was stopped, or in the process of being stopped, the new villain popped up, and it was my colleague Skip. And do I think Skip's tweet was awkwardly worded? Yes. Do I think that those of us, and I will put myself in that same category, that are either intentionally or just by nature somewhat polarizing, have to be extra cautious about anything we say in true real life moments because we are almost by nature make people feel some type of way about certain things. Yeah. And do I understand why for certain folks, Skip's tweet at least initially really struck them the wrong way? I do. Do I also think that any fair and accurate reading of everything on his timeline leading up to that, and including that tweet, the end of it, made it very clear that he was thinking what a lot of us were thinking while being concerned desperately for this young man. Anyone acting like it didn't cross their mind, what is the league going to do here? You can't play this game, but they've got a mess on their hands now. Anyone acting like that didn't cross your mind, I'm going to tell you, I don't believe you. There might be, listen, if you are a family member, if you are maybe a former football player that views it differently, I believe you. But for the majority of us, that at least came in our minds. And the reason I know it is because the very next day, yesterday, that was the topic everywhere. Now, you want to say that wasn't the time or the place for it? Fine. I'm not, I am not, I understand that part of it. However, the immediate cry that this was a near criminal act was once again simply, in my opinion, folks looking for a villain when it was not one. So why do we do it? Well, one is inexplicable tragedy is hard for the human brain to comprehend. And we want to find, it's the same reason why it took less than 24 hours for some folks to try to kind of toe the line of maybe T. Higgins is at fault. Nobody was at fault. Anyone that watched this knows nobody was at fault. But we got to find somebody. Because otherwise, I don't think we have the ability to process it. Religious folks do, to a degree. And we'll talk about that in a moment as well. I have great admiration for religious folks in moments like this. But I said guilt earlier, and I want to say that. I want to explain my thoughts there. I think the reason with football specifically, whenever something bad happens, we are so adamant that if not for this boogeyman of the day X, this wouldn't have happened, is because it's the way we all reconcile the fact that the only real way to make this sport safe is for it not to be played, but we all love it, and a lot of us gamble on it, and a lot of us make our money off it, and we play fantasy, and we get so wrapped up, but we can't be the bad guys. No. When Tua Tagovailoa has his head smashed against the turf in Cincinnati, no. That could have been prevented, guys. That was the Dolphins' fault. And Mike McDaniel's lying. And the league must not care about its players because it's something that happened a week before that not many of us took any notice of. But now we do. And when this young man suffers cardiac arrest after the most regular football play you'll see all week, no. That either could have been prevented or the league didn't do the right thing or this media member that I already hated is the worst guy in the world, as opposed to This is the devil's bargain we've all made. Everybody. Violent, dangerous, scary sport that we love, that is the most popular in America. And the players and the fans and the league have all agreed we will make it as safe as we can while acknowledging can't be totally safe. Yet, when the true scary tragedy happens, some folks want to pretend that their hands are totally clean. And I'm here to tell you, my hands are about as dirty as it gets. I literally make my living talking about these games. And maybe that, some folks will say that is my complicity in all of this. I am letting myself off the hook, whatever. What I won't be is a hypocrite. And what I won't be is pretending that every time something awful happens, it could have been preventable or prevented, or it could have been handled better if only this boogeyman X would have done his job. I won't do that. And I wish instead there was more of an immediate focus on the folks who did their jobs, who it does appear saved this young man's life. And lastly, before we get to the actual show, this went longer than I thought it would. My apologies. I said earlier I was envious in some ways of the religious folks. And I said on TV that in these times, listen, I'm not a religious person. However, and I said this on TV, I'll say it again, my wife is a deeply religious person. And while we don't go to church as much as she would like, she has true, deep spiritual beliefs. There's an envious component of when something like this happens, those folks have a grounding that I don't. But that's not actually what I wanted to say about the religious community. I want to say something else here. And we talk almost no politics on this show, and we've never talked religion on this show. But bear with me for just a moment. There are, in some ways, I feel like the religious communities have at times, not at times, a lot of times, gotten a bad rap. And zealots of any faith are typically folks that I don't have quarter for. And I think do a great deal of damage on a worldwide scale. Okay? However, I spent 30 seconds on TV this week just being honest, saying, hey, I'm not a religious person. This is what I said here. But Brew, my partner on TV, is, my wife is, and I'm envious of you guys in that regard in moments like this. And the number of people who are deeply religious, who reached out to me with a welcoming hand saying, hey, man, it's available to you. Hey, thank you for your words. Also know this, that, and the other. Not trying to convert me. Not saying, well, you better get on board or else you're going to burn internal. None of the extreme stuff that I think we paint with a broad brush at times. Just genuine kindness and just genuine care that they were like, hey, this is a guy who said isn't religious. Sounds like he might want to be. And it's available. I thought that was a striking act of kindness. And I appreciate it. Now, I don't know I'm going to take anyone up on it. It is a conflicted part of my own brain. But I do feel like in this moment, there is when I'm saying we should give credit more often, I also want to give it to our some of our folks in the religious communities out there that I was struck by their kindness and generosity of spirit. And I hope that made sense. And one of the reasons I like this show is it's a platform, unlike, you could never do this for a half hour on TV. But we could today, and we could here. And I appreciate you guys. And as I always say, my thoughts are with Damar, and if you're a prayerful type, please pray for him. And it looks like there's good news on the horizon. And I hope this resonated with some folks.
Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to get more from the show, and make sure to click the bell to get notified every time new content drops. Check out full episodes of What's Right wherever you get your podcasts, or just click the link in the description below.